Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Great to have you guys along. On today's show, Ryan Fowler of The Game on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. He will share his thoughts on this Alabama football team as they prepare for a tough road trip to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators. Also, our buddy Matt Moscona, he caught up with Cole Cubelic on his Baton Rouge radio show, talking all things SEC. So we'll let you hear some of what Cole Cubelic had to say about the SEC heading into Week 3. And we will go around the conference as teams prepare for Week 3 of SEC action. A very interesting quote from Shane Beamer talking about Kirby Smart and the Georgia defense. We'll let you hear that as well. I'm Chris Gordy. Be sure to follow Locked On SEC for free wherever you get your podcasts. You get the latest episode of the show as soon as it comes out each and every day. And a reminder, check out some of our other great podcasts across the Locked On Podcast Network. You can hear Locked On Auburn with Zach Blackerby, Locked On Vols with Eric Kane. Find them wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's do it. Let's jump right into it.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start with Shane Beamer talking with the media yesterday ahead of their matchup against Georgia in Athens this Saturday. Beamer said quarterback Luke Doty was at practice and continues to do more and more each day. He said the biggest thing is he's trying to get the soreness out and knock off the rust, but said he expects Doty to be 100% for Saturday's game. Beamer also gushed over Georgia's defensive talent, saying they're the best group he has ever seen in Athens. Here was Shane Beamer.
Many of you have followed SEC football longer than I have, but he probably does have the most talented football team in the history of Georgia football. And that's not an embellishment and coach speak and all of that. When you look at from top to bottom, the 11 that start on offense, the 11 that start on defense, all of their special teams units, the depth they have, the size, the physicality, the speed they have. I hadn't seen them at all because we played obviously the same time they did when we played Eastern Illinois, so I didn't see their game on TV against Clemson. They were playing the same time I think that we were last week against East Carolina, so the first time that I was able to dive into watching them was Sunday once we got started on our game week prep, and wow. There is a reason they were picked to win the SEC East, and the talent just jumps off the tape at you.
Obviously, some pretty strong words there from Shane Beamer. Now, is he trying to be overly complimentary of the team that he's getting ready to face? Probably so, but saying the best defensive team that has ever played in Athens, pretty damn strong. Best team ever been in Athens for the Georgia Bulldogs. Unbelievable. Penn State coach James Franklin, he's trying to get ready for his big matchup this week against Auburn as they come to town, and a lot of national attention is on that game. ESPN's College Game Day will be there, but Auburn's previous opponents this season are making that difficult for James Franklin to prepare. The Tigers have knocked off Akron 60-10 and Alabama State 62-0, and James Franklin said it's kind of hard to get a read on this team having played two much lesser opponents. But James Franklin said he praised quarterback Bo Nix, his start to the season. Nix is completing 74% of his passes for almost 400 yards, 5 touchdowns and no picks. Franklin said he does a lot of things well. He's athletic. He can make plays. He's accurate. I've been impressed with him. Penn State is also promoting the whiteout game this Saturday. Penn State puts on, they expect a special atmosphere with a lot of people wearing the white T-shirts and white color, and really cool when they do the whiteout. And Auburn better be ready. Over in Knoxville, after Tennessee's loss to Pitt on Saturday, one thing was very apparent that the Vols kind of struggled to get the ball down the field. We talked earlier this week about Joe Milton struggling to hit receivers down the field, overthrowing them, but wide receivers coach Cody Burns said Tuesday the Vols are very young offensively, but he expects things to improve in that regard as the season goes along. He said, we're very young in the offense, quarterback and receiver. We're going to get those deep balls eventually. There's no blame on anybody. And related to that, it looks like Hendon Hooker may be starting at quarterback for now because of Joe Milton's injury. Josh Heupel said earlier this week he has no idea about the health of Milton, but whoever ends up starting for Tennessee moving forward is going to have to step up in the passing game. Over to LSU, Coach Ed Orgeron said he likes what he's seen out of his quarterback, Max Johnson, over the first 2 weeks of the season. Orgeron, doing an interview yesterday, was asked about LSU's look to the sideline strategy, or check with me, as we call it, and getting plays in on the offense. He said, yeah, we've got to change it. We're taking too long. We're giving up too much time for defenses to make their changes. We're changing the play. They're changing their play. So obviously that has to be retooled. That has to be rethought on how we are going to do things. Look, when they had Joe Burrow out there, it was run a play, hurry up, get to the next play. The check with me is kind of, I don't know, a lot of teams still do it. It seems like that was more of a trend a couple years ago. Some teams do still like doing it. Hurry up to the line and then turn to the sideline and say, all right, what's the next play? Or do we check out of this? Do we move something else? Look, man, just run your offense. Over in Fayetteville, while Arkansas fans are celebrating their team's victory still from Saturday night over Texas, former Florida State QB and football analyst Danny Cannell, he's saying pump the brakes. He tweeted out on social media, okay, enough is enough, because this whole welcome to the SEC stuff by Arkansas after a nice win versus Texas is getting annoying. As if 4 or 5 Big 12 teams a year haven't been doing this to Texas for the past decade. Shaking my head. As many SEC fans know, Danny Cannell is not a fan of the conference since his days at ESPN and likes to get SEC fans riled up because they talk about him and it keeps him relevant. So kudos to Danny Cannell, but Arkansas fans, enjoy your win and tell Danny Cannell to shut the hell up. Over at Kentucky, star running back Chris Rodriguez appeared on the Paul Feinbaum show earlier this week to talk about the team's exciting win over Missouri. Rodriguez told Feinbaum that last year's 20-10 loss to Mizzou motivated his team this year. He said, throughout the week, we just knew we had to have a chip on our shoulder because last year we felt like we were prepared, but our energy level wasn't there, so we felt like we owed them one. Kentucky certainly proved it on the field against Missouri, a monster win for them at home to improve to 2-0. Speaking of Missouri, their head coach Eli Drinkwitz was not pleased, not only his defense, but the lack of depth among his linebackers. Talking with the media on Tuesday, expressed his anger and frustration. Drinkwitz said he wished the Tigers could play 5 linebackers in their rotation, but he said, quote, there aren't 5 worthy linebackers on the roster at the moment. He said, we really wish we were playing 5 guys, but the truth is nobody has stepped up in practice to show they deserve the opportunity. Other people will play when they earn the opportunity to play. So some harsh words, but the Tigers have given up nearly 1,000 yards on defense in their first 2 games of the season. They ranked 121 in the country in total defense, giving up nearly 30 points per game. The NCAA is reportedly moving closer to expanding the football signing class limit, and a move that will come with a 1-year waiver. According to Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated, an updated change is that teams can replace any 7 players who enter the portal, even if they are dismissed. However, those that leave for the NFL or retire cannot be replaced. The December signing period will be the key date for players entering the portal, and after up to 7 can be replaced. For example, a school that loses 5 players to the portal can now sign 30 new players. A school that loses 10 players to the portal can sign 32 new players if the cap were at 7. So pretty cool deal. Look, it's been silly this whole time where it's like, oh, you want a kid from the portal? Oh, well, he counts to get your signing class. No, that kid should just be extra, especially if you lost a bunch of guys that left early for the draft. NCAA never makes a lot of sense, and finally they're maybe seeing the light on this one. And one other note in terms of ESPN Films and SEC Network and documentaries and all that, Kenny Chesney is back working with ESPN Films on a documentary. This time it's going to focus on the biggest voices in SEC history. ESPN announced the 11th season of SEC Storied will begin with a 90-minute film titled More Than a Voice, which will showcase some of the legendary football play-by-play voices in conference history. Kenny Chesney served as the executive producer on the film. It will air September 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the SEC Network. And there you have it. That is Around the Conference. When we return, we're going to talk all things Alabama with Ryan Fowler of 100.9 Tide Radio ahead of the Alabama-Florida game this weekend. That is next. Need to remind you about our friends over at BetOnline. They are back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back and another football season is underway. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all things pro and college football betting action every season. With a new updated site and interface, you got even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to their website right now. You can do so on your mobile device. Sign up today. Receive a 100% welcome bonus when you use our promo code Locked On, or double your initial deposit just for signing up. You can use the promo code NFL100 there. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers at BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, they are your online sportsbook experts. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy here with you. And, man, it's been 2 weeks into the SEC season, already craziness happening all across the conference, and already a monster matchup happening this weekend. You know, Bama kind of has had the luxury in a lot of years where they avoid some of the better teams in the East, don't have to play Florida or Georgia every year. Team like LSU, they got to play Florida every year. Team like Auburn, they got to play Georgia every year. But this is one of those years where Bama gets one of the tougher teams in the crossover with the East with the Florida Gators. And not only do they get them, they have to go to the Swamp. And join us now to talk a little bit about this monster matchup is our buddy Ryan Fowler from 100.9 The Tide. Ryan, how are you, man?
Man, I'm doing great. I hope you guys are doing good. And, college football is, it's off to a really good start. I'm here in Tuscaloosa, and, we kind of feed off the energy of college football. So we're glad to have it back. And 2 weeks in, there's a lot to complain about, but there's also a lot to be excited about if you're an Alabama fan.
Well, let's touch on it there real quick, Ryan. Obviously, 2 weeks into Alabama, I think we were all kind of taken aback at how good they looked week one against Miami. We figured they'd win the game, but just didn't think they would look that dominant like the same Alabama team we've seen in recent years with all the new pieces that they had. But they looked the part, and then, against Mercer this past week, didn't really have to do much playing an FCS opponent. It was a dominant win. But where do you grade Alabama 2 weeks into the season so far?
Well, I think they've got a lot of areas that they can clean up. I think this defense is going to be elite. I think that all really depends on, if they can get Will Anderson back. Without Will Anderson, I don't think this team is going to be able to reach that, elite defensive status. But I think the defense is what really grabs you. We thought it would be good under Pete Golden, and it has been. When you back up and you take a look at, this defensive side of the football. But I go back to the offense. Bryce Young has probably exceeded my expectations of this team so far. I still think that the offensive line is a work in progress, and I don't know if they've settled on the best five guys. We're going to find out who those five guys are because this, to me, is the real challenge. Opening up in the SEC, you're going to go up against SEC defensive linemen, and you're going to find out. I watched Alabama's offensive line struggle at times with some of the younger players during the offseason. And I'm like, okay, is this because they're going up against, elite pass rushers? A lot of times Alabama goes twos against ones, and they do good on good, one against one. But then we get to the season, and it's like, okay, they're able to dominate Miami, but then I watched it come back, and they kind of relaxed. Right tackle Chris Owens was bumped out from center out to right tackle. Darian Dalcourt at the center. I don't know if Chris can be able to lock that right tackle spot down for the complete season. I think he's a plug-and-play guy. He could play if somebody goes down. Landon Dickerson went down last year. He subbed in at center for a couple of games for him. I just don't know if he's one of the best five that you've got out there right now because he missed a lot of assignments in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. We know how good Evan Neal is on that left side of the line, but,
Sure.
Alabama, they've run the ball okay. They haven't run the ball like the dominant Alabama, run game that we're so used to. And maybe that's just because they're playing so many different guys. I mean, they're really sharing the rock from Brian Robinson to Trey Sanders to Jace McClellan. But, I mean, through 2 games, they have 300 rushing yards. Don't get me wrong. But I think we're just used to seeing Bama run for, 200 yards every week.
Well, and I think, you look at Trey Sanders, I'm not exactly sure if he's not the best back on the team. And he's a guy that's coming back from the car accident. I think Brian Robinson's another guy that can give you a lot of different things. I think Jace McClellan is a player that is very talented and can be a featured back. I think Brian Robinson has, his advantages when you look at what he can do, the leadership, picking up blocks, and, some of those guys are trying to get to your quarterback that can take the heat off those guys. But I go back for just a little bit. It seems like the rushing attack, I would put a lot of that responsibility on that offensive line. I just don't think they push people around. And I think, hey, look, you lose Deontay Brown, who's played in Carolina. You lose Landon Dickerson, who's playing in Philadelphia. That's a lot of leadership, but that's a lot of manpower that you lose, and you're trying to replace that. I just don't know if this team, right? Alex Leatherwood, heck, you forget about that. 3 out of the 5. So Alex is playing out at Oakland. And so, we saw Oakland, Las Vegas. I saw him last night playing with the Raiders. But so you're trying to find a way to replace that. I just don't think they've hit their peak right now. I would give it about a C minus on that offensive line. I think it all goes back to that side, that small dimension of the football team is that offensive line.
You touched on the defense. I just wanted to go back to them real quick because, look, you lose a monster, piece just in week 1 with Chris Allen. But, Christian Harris has showed he's really good. Henry TuaToa from Tennessee has been good. And you mentioned Will Anderson. It sounds like he's going to play this weekend, and that's, trending the right direction. That's really good if he plays. But to me, I'm looking more at that defensive line, and we're starting to see – we always see that guy who's hung around 3-4 years and ready to take that next step because he knows all the NFL scouts are watching. Phidarian Mathis, a couple of sacks, a fumble recovery already. He's a guy to me that can be a difference maker on that defensive line. But what do you make of the defensive front as a whole?
Yeah, you pointed out Phidarian there for just a couple seconds, man. I think he's had a good camp. He's had a first couple of good games, and I think he's filling in a spot where Alabama needs leaders. They need a leader to step up on that front. Here's what to me makes that defensive line so good, and it's the depth. That's where they can literally rotate 7-8 guys in that spot. I think that's what makes Alabama a really, really good team. Is the depth on that defensive front. You point out Phidarian Mathis. You go through and you take a look at Justin Abogbie there. Just the depth that you can do, and then even Coach Saban had talked about how that they've trained some of these guys that they could actually drop down and play that defensive end role. You're some of your guys like when you think about. Will Anderson's big enough that he could anchor a lot of that side over there if you need it. But you go through the defensive line, there's certainly some guys that stand out, but I think it's the depth that you've got on that group. 8-9 guys that you can rotate through and stay pretty fresh. I think that's really the difference between the SEC and some of the other conferences. I watched Texas just get run over the other day, and it goes back to defensive line. I just didn't see a lot of studs out there on that defensive front that can slow it down. I think that's the biggest difference in the SEC is that defensive front. And not just having 1 or 2 dudes, you got to have enough guys that you can rotate through. Let's say you get 5, 6 guys, but I think in Alabama's case, they've probably got 8 or 9 guys that they feel pretty comfortable with up on that front.
Talking with our buddy Ryan Fowler, host on the Tide, a 100.9 in Tuscaloosa, the game as well. Ryan, let's get into this matchup. Alabama against Florida in the Swamp. It's going to be a sold-out crowd, a packed environment, and a great early season road test for Bryce Young. We saw him do it on the neutral field in Atlanta. We saw him do it at home at Bryant-Denny this past weekend, but now his first test in a road environment. And man, Florida has got a very intriguing offense with Emory Jones and this Anthony Richardson kid. Every time he touches the ball, he does something special. It's a really intriguing matchup. What do you think about it?
Well, think about it for just a couple of minutes. When you look at Dan Mullen, he was never able to beat Alabama at Mississippi State. I think he's a really good coach. I just don't know if Florida is going to be able to. And I think we're seeing that with Las Vegas, right? They came out early, and it was 15 points. Now, I always like to watch the way the line moves early on. And I'm talking about because your professional handicappers, they jump on those lines early. And I watched them open the line up at 15, and it jumped all the way up to 16.5. And I got to thinking to myself, Vegas put that number out there, but the professional handicappers, they drove that number up. So it went up to 16.5. So I think Alabama's that good that they looked a little rough. I think people are going to fall into that trap about Mercer, but I really think that Alabama will go to Gainesville and you'll see leaders develop. I think leaders, they're short on leaders. They don't have a Najee Harris. They don't have a Landon Dickerson, a Devontae Smith. They're still trying to develop those key leaders. I think the leaders will come out of this weekend because when you go on the road and you got 80,000 people that are screaming at you and they literally want you to drop to your knees with an injury or they hate you for every reason, not personal, but you've got the crimson jersey on. When you go into that hostile environment, I think that's where leadership is going to develop. I think Alabama takes a big step in the right direction this way. I would feel pretty comfortable saying that Alabama would not only win, but I think they'll cover that spread.
Wow. It's a bold prediction there. And look, to be honest, I think a lot of Florida Gator fans are wondering, what's going on with their quarterback spot. I mean, Emory Jones has not been bad this year, but again, Anthony Richardson has been electric when he's touched the football, tweaked his hamstring late in the game last week, and you just wonder how healthy he'll be. I say Florida's got to play both to even have a chance to stay in this one. But if Richardson is limited or not able to play at all, I think Bama runs away, and like I'm with you. I think Florida doesn't even cover the points, and I think Alabama is well on their way to get another very special season. Ryan, thanks so much for the time, man. Really appreciate it, and let our listeners know where they can find you.
Hey, we do it every day in Tuscaloosa. You can connect with me at Ryan C. Fowler. We talk Alabama football 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, and it looks like Alabama. They've got some work to do, but we talk about it every day, and I appreciate you guys talking with college football. We love it in T-Town, and we love those who share the same passion as we do. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Ryan Fowler, Tide 100.9. Thanks again, Ryan.
Hey, thank you, guys. Have a great day.
All right, there he is, Ryan Fowler from the Tide in Tuscaloosa, and love catching up with Ryan at SEC Media Days every year and talking all things college football with him. More after this right here on Locked On SEC. Need to remind you guys about our friends over at Built Bar. We ask you guys all the time, what is your favorite Built Bar flavor? 9 delicious flavors. When you talk to somebody who's a fan of the Built Bar, they've got their favorites. Mine is the mint brownie. I know some people out there love the raspberry, the cherry, the double chocolate. There is literally something for everybody. And if you haven't tried them all, the easiest thing to do is try a mixed box. You get each 2 of each of the 9 flavors. You get to try them all, see which one you like the most. Many of the flavors packed with 17 grams of protein, only 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs. You can't go wrong. If you're grabbing a bag of potato chips or a bag of cookies every afternoon and you're eating that, look, you got to find a healthier alternative. Built Bar is the way to go. They're great after a workout. You're looking for a way to pack on the protein. If you just had a good cardio or weightlifting session, go with Built Bar. You just have to go to BuiltBar.com. Use our promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15. If you've never used them before, you'll get 15% off your first order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off over at BuiltBar.com. We've been telling you all week long, college football fanatics, about our friends at Prize Picks. They're a daily fantasy app making daily fantasy easy for you. They are a leader in college sports daily fantasy. They offer more college football props than anyone in the world. They offer all the star players from the Power 5. So if you want to get some SEC players, they got all those there as well. They offer you any prop you could think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Prize Picks allows mixed sport entries, so if you want to do basketball, you want to do baseball, you want to do football, they've got it all for you there, right there. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. Don't hesitate. Go check them out. Their award-winning app is available on both the App Store and Google Play. Go check them out at prizepicks.com. prizepicks.com, or go to your app store, download the app today. It is daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks. I guarantee you will have so much more fun watching the games on a Saturday with Prize Picks watching the SEC. Brought along here, Locked On SEC. Our thanks to Ryan Fowler for joining us there last segment. We did this last week, and I thought it was really, really good stuff, and so I figured we'd do it again this week. Great content from Baton Rouge. Cole Cubelic from the SEC Network, ESPN, Jocks FM. Weekly, he joins our buddy Matt Moscona, who's the host of Locked On LSU, and he's on 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. And they talk all things SEC every week. So I thought I'd let you hear a little bit of Cole's conversation this week with Matt. They started off talking about the Arkansas win over Texas. Cole asked his thoughts on the Arkansas win, beating the Longhorns this past weekend.
I actually thought Arkansas had a good chance to win the game. I thought it would come down to quarterback play, and Arkansas was able to disrupt the passer more so than Texas was able to disrupt the passer. And I also believe that Kendall Briles and Sam Pittman essentially said, you know what? Our quarterback's got good ability to run. He's tough. He's big. He's physical. He can take the pounding. So we're going to go out and just let him run the ball. And I thought once they decided to do that and essentially not try to make him something that he's not and allow KJ Jefferson to go out and be a runner and install quarterback runs and allow that to be a big part of their game plan, they were going to be able to be successful. I thought Kendall Briles called an excellent game. The formations, lining different players up in different places. You saw Treylon Burks lined up in the backfield. And then Barry Odom again, man. I mean, like Barry just keeps getting it done. They're able to get home with a 3-man pass rush, which 2 transfer defensive tackles have helped with that a lot. But he just keeps coming up with plans that slow people down and stop other offenses. And physically, Arkansas outmatched Texas for 60 minutes. And not just slightly. I mean, in a big way. They were the more physical football team, and ultimately I thought that was the difference.
Next up, Cole was asked about Texas A&M and the idea, are they in trouble after barely winning over Colorado and now having to go with Zach Calzada at quarterback with Haynes King hurt?
I don't think so. I'm not ready to say that because, number one, when you lose your starting quarterback in the middle of a game, now – understand this can work both ways because we've seen, backup quarterback comes in and, where's that guy been for however long? And he looks like the better option. We've seen that occasionally, and every now and then that you'll get that. But when you know who your guy is and they're 2 different style quarterbacks, which Zach Calzada doesn't have the mobility that Haynes King does. So you're drawing up different things. And I also think, let's go back it would be a year ago, 2 weeks from now, because the schedule is all messed up. You remember what happened about 380 days ago? Texas A&M 10, Vanderbilt 7. Everybody wet their pants because they thought that Texas A&M was the worst team in the league. And what happened? And they went on to, I think they've won now, it would have been 9 more after that. And then 10 with the bowl, and then so they won 12 since then in a row, or they lost to Bama the next week, and then they won like 9 more. They've won 11 since then. So I don't think they're in trouble. I understand that some things are going to take a while to adjust. You got Kenyon Green over at right tackle. He's not really used to that. The continuity on the offensive line doesn't look great, but it doesn't mean that they don't have the talent and the ability to be a good football team. I still think that they do. And they have the schedule that will allow them to continue to grow into the season.
Next up, Matt Moscona with Cole Cubelic, and he asked, Cole, what did we learn about Kentucky and Missouri this weekend with the Wildcats winning their first SEC matchup of the season, the first SEC matchup of the season, period?
Missouri's got some offensive line issues. I think they're really good at tailback. I think Connor Baszler can be great at quarterback when he gets help. I'm a little concerned about their defense. I thought the big issue for them was going to be their edge or overhang defenders, essentially defensive end, outside linebacker, rovers, because Kentucky is going to continue to run that stretch play over and over and over, because that's what they're going to build the bootlegs off of. They'll build some zone read off of it. They'll build some Q runs off of that and some play action deep shots off of that. And that's what they had success with. Christopher Rodriguez doesn't fumble that ball going into the end zone before the half. The game's over. It's 28-7, and I think it's lights out O'Reilly. So I think you've got a gamer at quarterback, a guy who might not be overly polished. He might not understand the nuances of the position, but he's tough, he's fun, he's energetic, he's big and physical, he can do some different things. He can throw it over the mountains over there, and I think that he just gives you a little bit something different when he's playing the position. And defensively, Kentucky is just they're not overly athletic, they're not real twitchy, but they're a heavy-handed group. They're a group that you don't want to see them in a street fight, and they're going to make you earn most of what you get. So there's a reason I picked them to finish second in the East, and you saw a lot of it on display Saturday night.
A brewing quarterback controversy in Gainesville. Matt asked Cole about Anthony Richardson potentially earning the starting job for Florida over Emory Jones.
I don't think he's the best. How do I say this? I don't think he's their best quarterback right now, but I think he would be their most dynamic player if you put him in on offense. So, I'm on record saying I don't think Florida can beat Alabama with Emory Jones at quarterback. I think they have a chance to do it with Anthony Richardson because he's a guy that at any moment can go out there and give you wow plays, create explosive plays, but it's very different doing it down in, down out, series in, series out, once defenses make adjustments, and once they have a chance to see you a little bit and try to surprise you a little bit to see how you react and see how you manage that. So he himself would not propel me to believe that Florida is automatically the second best team in the East. I still think they have some issues in the secondary. I still want to see the middle of that defensive line continue to prove themselves. And obviously, I still don't think outside of the quarterback position they're going to be great running the ball because I don't think the offensive line is going to get much of a push once they start playing SEC defensive lines.
It's a couple more of Matt Moscona, host of Locked on LSU, his conversation with Cole Cubelic of the SEC Network and Jocks FM. Matt asks Cole, have you been surprised with Mississippi State here at 2-0 to start the year?
Yeah, they were kind of my surprise team in the league this year. And I think I was doing SEC Now with Dari on Friday, and he asked me who I thought was going to look most different from week 1 to week 2. And it was Mississippi State. I mean, you tell me how many times you've seen a team lose 5 fumbles in a game. That just doesn't happen. That's an anomaly. That's a very rare occurrence. They had 6 total turnovers. The one interception, Will Rogers was rolling out. He had pressure. He's trying to make a play. DB stepped in front of it. That's one that he knows he shouldn't have thrown, and he can correct that quickly. So I figured they'd clean that up and get that repaired. And just Zach Arnett, man, he gets that defense to play like their hair's on fire. And they lost their 3 best players on that side of the ball, Errol Thompson, Kobe Jones, and Marquise Spencer, but they're plugging and going. They're going to give you every single look you can imagine. They're going to stunt. They're going to blitz. They're going to do all kinds of things. They're going to move the look a little bit before the snap, and they're going to roll coverages, change coverages. They're a very different group to play. And NC State is not very complex on offense. Love their left tackle. Ikwambu is a wonderful player. Got a chance to be one of the first tackles off the board. I think they have some backs that run hard, quarterbacks average, but they're not very diverse in their playbook with what they do. So having said that, when you get a group that's going to attack you and it's going to come at you in different ways, you have to adjust if it's not working out of the gate. And there weren't great adjustments, I didn't think, on the part of NC State. And defensively, I think they're a step behind SEC speed. They've got good physicality in the front 7, but they're not going to be able to run.
Lastly, from Cole Cubelic, Matt asked him about LSU and their offensive line struggles so far through 2 weeks.
Yeah, the protection's got to improve first and foremost, man, because you got a quarterback that can get it done. And I think Max has proved that more than the UCLA game, more than this past week. He proved it some towards the end of last year. He's got the toughness, the moxie, the accuracy. He obviously has the arm strength to make the throws. I think there are enough weapons on the perimeter. I'm still a little bit concerned about tailback and how that's going to go. Still a little bit concerned about the run game and just in general. Is that ever ever going to get going? Is that going to be something that LSU can ever sort of lean on, rely on, build some things around? But the thing that has to happen, that has to be different, more so than anything else, is protecting the quarterback. Because number one, you lost your other quarterback. You can say backup starter, whatever you want in the preseason camp, and you just don't really have another guy to turn to that's going to be close to this level. So I think QB protection has got to change, got to be different, and that was sort of my biggest takeaway from that game.
And again, Cole Cubelic joining our buddy Matt Moscona every week over on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Again, appreciate Matt for letting us share that audio with you. Thank you to Cole Cubelic for tremendous insight. Cole, of course, of the SEC Network and Jocks FM, and our buddy Matt Moscona, host of Locked On LSU. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. We're here for you 5 days a week talking all things SEC. Remember to check us out on YouTube as well, in addition to the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. A reminder, betting on the SEC doesn't have to be a guessing game. If you listen to the new Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and Lee Sterling, get Lee's Lock of the Day. Follow Locked On Bets, brought to you by BetOnline AG, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.